I was talking about it earlier this week. I think Dennis Allen is the next best choice to be the Niners defensive coordinator if things fall through with Robert Saleh and he gets a head coaching job somewhere else. And a few reasons for that. People want to knock Dennis Allen for being a failed head coach with the Saints and with the Raiders. He was an elite defensive coordinator under Sean Payton. And when it comes to player evaluation and coach evaluation, I trust Sean Payton. Look at what he's done with the development of Bo Nix. Look at what he did during his tenure in New Orleans. He's a great offensive mind, but look at some of his hirings too. Greg Williams was a good DC for a long time. He has Vance Joseph with the Broncos right now, and the Broncos were one of the top defenses in the NFL without a lot of like marquee premier defensive talent. And so Dennis Allen was a great DC under Sean Payton. He's also very creative with his coverages on the back end. And that's different than a guy like Brian Flores, who you will see a lot of eye candy, aggression, and a lot of creativity with his fronts. He will put 5 or 6 guys as down linemen. He'll put 7 to 8 guys in the box. He'll send the house. He'll tease blitz. Some guys will drop back. They'll run twists and stunts. And so Flores is creative in that way. Dennis Allen is creative in a different way where he mixes and matches and gets creative with the coverage on the back end. And so he has a long defensive background and has done a great job of developing DBs. Think about this Niners roster right now. They have some really good young DBs.
Renardo.
Exactly. Yep. Like Diamador Lenore played at a Pro Bowl, All-Pro level this year. Renardo Green was excellent as a rookie. You have Malik Mustafa. And a reason that I want to see a good defensive coordinator come in here is the development of players. Get Jair Brown back on track. I watched him at Penn State. I covered him at Penn State. I saw what he did in year 1 under Steve Wilkes, who had a defensive background. And he played very well replacing Talanoa Hufanga. The guy intercepted Patrick Mahomes on a really nice play in the Super Bowl. He can be in the box. He can roam deep. I think that a good DC can put him in a position to succeed. I think that Jair Brown is a player. And so Dennis Allen could do a good job of maximizing him. As far as the scheme continuity goes, Dennis Allen runs a 4-3. He's that 2-time failed head coach, so he's not going to get another head coaching job. So that would give the Niners continuity at defensive coordinator. Something interesting here, too, if Kyle Shanahan wants to make some adjustments, and if he still wants to run the 4-3 but have different elements of it, since 2017, the Niners are the number 1 zone team under Shanahan. During his time with New Orleans, the Saints were the number 1 press man rate in the NFL. And then Allen relies on 4 to get home. The 49ers have the 5th lowest blitz rate since 2017. And so you'll see differences in press man. You'll see some creativity and changes adapting with what you do on the back end. But some of the scheme and schematic elements are still the same with Dennis Allen.
And you tweeted about this week. I think that was one of the notes that I copied this week, and I was like, hey, you know what? I want to talk to Chase about that. So I'm glad that we got into that. You also kind of like the idea of the 49ers going after Drew Dalman in free agency. Let's talk a little bit about your vision there. The Niners, I was looking at some numbers today from Niners Nation on Jake Brendel, and it's like, I don't know what Chris Forster's talking about when he talks so highly of Jake Brendel. I'm not getting it. It makes no sense, Chase. He clearly underperformed this year.
Yeah.
And yet if you listen to Chris, it's like, oh no, we love Jake, and Jake's better at 7 things than these other guys. He's better than Zakel. He's better than Barch. He's better than Nugent. He's better than all these guys. Well, okay, Chris, but here's the reality. There are 32 starting centers in the NFL. Jake Brendel finished 18th in the NFL with a pass blocking grade of 55.1 on 656 pass blocking snaps. And if you look, he was the weakest member of that line. He allowed the 7th most pressures by any center with 28. Yep. He allowed 22 hurries while committing 10 penalties. To me, there's no question that Brendel has to be upgraded from. And Drew Dalman's a great name. He's a free agent. He played at Stanford. His daddy was Chris Dalman, who we just had on the show a couple years ago. He was one of the honorary captains. I think he's a principal of a high school in Southern or Central California now. Drew Dalman is a really underrated player. He was good at Stanford, captain there, really good in Atlanta. They run a very similar scheme. I think Drew Dalman, the Niners have shown in the past, they like to invest dollars in the center position.
Yeah.
Baldy has said, and I love Baldy's comment here, he says, if you don't have a good center, you don't have a good line.
Yeah.
And I really think Brendel's got to go. Brendel's been giving me dirty looks all year because I've been ripping him. But you know what? Sorry, man. The truth has to be told. What is your thought on Drew Dalman, and is he gettable, or what kind of price tag do you think he's going to come with?
I think he's gettable for sure. And for those of you in Northern California, I know there's a lot of you watching the Krueger show right now, in addition to people all across the country and the world. Dalman went to Palma High School in Salinas, California. As you mentioned, he went to Stanford. He was a 2021 fourth-round pick, 114th overall selection. And, yeah, his dad played for the San Francisco 49ers. My thought process here is that obviously the Niners need to rebuild the offensive line. At left guard, in my opinion, Aaron Banks not good enough, and he could get $8 to $10 million per year in free agency. I'm not paying that for a player who I think is mediocre and too inconsistent. They need to upgrade at center, and they need to upgrade at right tackle. And so you can do all of that in the draft, but you can also do some of it in the draft and in free agency. And this offseason, they can address center in free agency with Dalman. Kyle Shanahan has shown a willingness to spend on centers. He signed Weston Richburg to a 5-year, $47.5 million contract back in 2018. Really good player at the start of that deal. Unfortunately, he had to medically retire. After that, the Niners signed Alex Mack to a 3-year deal worth almost $15 million. Alex Mack then retired shortly thereafter, but was a good player just like Weston Richburg was when they were both healthy. And there's also scheme familiarity here. The Falcons hired Raheem Morris from the Rams. Raheem Morris brought in a loaded Rams coaching staff that was under Sean McVay. That included Zach Robinson, who was the understudy for McVay. He was the offensive coordinator for Atlanta. And so a lot of the elements of the Sean McVay offense are the elements of the Kyle Shanahan offense. And so Dalman is a scheme fit. And here's the thing, too. Sometimes in free agency, you're signing these players when the age is at risk, right? Dalman's only 26 years old. So he's a young player who can be the focal point of your offensive line for a long time. And in this outside zone scheme, you need better center play. Dalman had an overall Pro Football Focus grade of 78.8. That was fourth among centers. A run blocking grade of 79.8. That was fifth. A pass blocking grade of 66.6. That was 22nd. Gave up 10 pressures, 1 quarterback hit, and 2 sacks. And if you sign him, and maybe it's $8 to $10 million per year, Niners have some cash. San Francisco can then still address left guard in the mid to late rounds and right tackle in the first 3 rounds in the draft. And then you're able to rebuild the trenches on the offensive side of the football, which is desperately needed. And with Jake Brendel, the numbers were just not good enough. He was one of the lowest graded centers in all of football. He did have an overall PFF grade of 65, 23rd among centers. Pass blocking grade of 55.1. That was 51st among 64 centers. A run blocking grade pretty good of 71.6. That was 12th. But in the pass game, he was consistently being pushed into Brock Purdy's lap. And Dalman, that's just not going to happen. Brendel, I think, with that knee tendonitis, a little bit weak with his lower half. He's not that big. I think Dalman has a really strong anchor. And so I just think he would be a massive upgrade, a player who I'd be willing to invest in. The Niners have paid centers, and that's one of my dream free agent targets for San Francisco here.